All right, welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Tonight we have my friend Nick on, and we are going to be talking about the Gun Run Land Nav Match in Ellerbe, North Carolina. So me and Nick partnered up for this. If you've been watching this show for a while, I did an after action last year. Nick and me were gonna team up last year, and he had some. He was crippled, he is uncrippled. Yeah. He is uncrippled now, and it was a great time. So we're just going to hop on into this. So the match flavor of this is, as the name suggests, a land nav match. The way that they do this works out really, really well. So the property there on one side is owned mostly by the range owners. On the other side of a kind of a two-lane road, there is a bunch of game land. So it's some of their property, but a lot of it is like state, county game land. So you start off, they give you a land navigation point. And for those, maybe I should back up, that don't know what land navigation is, they give you a grid code, like a kind of like, if you don't know, it's kind of like latitude and longitude, but it's a different way of breaking up the earth. Is that a good way to say that, Nick?
It's just a different system.
Yeah.
Same deal. Horizontal, vertical, X and Y axis, and a different way of measuring and getting coordinates based off that. So yeah.
So I got a map here, one of the ones Nick made for us to use, and they give you a grid coordinate. You plot that on your map using some tools. I think we may go over some of those here in a second, just to kind of give people an idea. And if you're on a land nav part of it, you're going to that point. They have a little card that you have and a little called a punch, just like it's got a bunch of little teeth in it, make a certain pattern on a paper to prove that you were there. And then you will go to whatever it tells you to do. So they start off, usually give you a grid coordinate. You go to point A. From there, point A may say, okay, go back to the start finish, or go to the checkpoint, or go here, and you just follow along. It's very linear. Sometimes they'll give you 2 points. You kind of have a choice, like maybe we'll go to C before D or vice versa. But then when it's time to shoot, they will send you on the other side of the road from where you're land navving, and you just follow signs to the shooting bay. So it works out really well. Nobody, in theory, as long as people pay attention to that road, which is really, really obvious, there's no way that someone will accidentally wander into a downrange with the land nav. So really good setup. Very fortunate they have that property kind of the way they do. Nick, anything you want to add into that?
No, not really. I think you covered it really well for just the match flavor. One more thing, just at distance too. Ryan mentioned is linear. It's linear in concept, but of course, when you're out in the trail, things might change. So it may become less and less linear as you go through. And I don't know if you mentioned this is roughly a 10K versus like the traditional 5K ish that the gun run does. So yeah, I think for this we clocked in at 9.8 is what my Garmin said. What did yours kind of clock in at?
Mine was around that. It paused itself at one point, but it was around 10 miles.
Okay, and that's about the average I've seen. Like about 9.7 to like 10.5 ish is about what I saw folks walking away with this match.
And that was kind of by design. It was a 10K if you went point to point.
Mm-hmm.
But
Correct.
for anyone who's done land nav, just like straight dead reckoning, like you're at this point, you're going to go to that point, shoot an azimuth, point your compass at that and walk straight there, is not realistic in most situations. And this was definitely the case. There's some very thick woods. I mean, this part of North Carolina doesn't have a lot of hills. It's fairly flat, but there is definitely some dense underbrush growth that, I will get over. At one point, we went to shoot an azimuth to go in, and we kind of spread out wide just to open our, and it took me 3 times trying to different areas to go in because I just hit an impenetrable wall of like thorns and vines and like it was not happening. So I don't know, did you have any of the map tool stuff? Do you want to kind of show some of what we're using?
Yeah, I actually have a couple with me now. I don't have them on me. With this, Ryan mentioned the map we have on hand that I produced for the gun run. You are given a map here, but I elected to make our own, and that was really helpful paired with our background with being on a property a little bit and the previous events that we had in the past. Despite the really gracious structure we have for the land and everything and the properties, there is only so much that can be done. So there is unfortunately a little gamerism going into it, but in the same way that if you're going into an operational area, you're going to go ahead and do some research on it in the way that we did beforehand. So that the map that we produced was one tool that we had. Another that we used, which is a sponsor of the gun run for this particular event, are map tools. So instead of using your standard, circular, square, triangular protractor, we go ahead and use different smaller and even lighter protractors. So these are really handy for doing your measurements and calculations really quickly. They're not awkwardly sized. They can go into a normal size pocket instead of a random cargo pocket that's going to inevitably snap the protractor and therefore make it useless. So those are a couple tools that we used. Another thing that we used as well, didn't want to, but situation did kind of dictate that it was useful, was a laser rangefinder. We can get into a little bit more about its use case further on. And then let's see, of course, a compass. I use a normal mil-spec Kaminga, I can't recall the name right now, Lanzetta compass. Ryan, did you use a Lanzetta compass? I couldn't recall.
No, I used like a base plate type. It's a Brunton, I think the True Arc 15 or 20 or something like that. It's it's a really nice compass.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally forgot about it, but my memory's jogged now. And yeah, that's a good compass. Either way, an accurate compass and a little bit of know-how with the map and just figuring out where you are on the map was quite useful. So anything you would have brought within those parameters would be very useful and very viable for this.
Yep. The only other tool I used, Nick didn't, but he's got a different technique we'll kind of talk about. I did bring like pace count beads, ranger beads, whatever you want to call them. Nick is another technique. Some people will break off pieces of sticks. They'll pick up rocks, drop a pebble into their pocket. So the whole point of this is sometimes you're pace counting. If you say like, oh, this is going to be I got to go 500 meters in this direction, let's say. You will use your beads. You figure out your pace count ahead of time. So like off the top of my head, it was like 68, paces for me is 100 meters. So every time I would hit that 100 meters, you just pull a bead down or break off a stick, whatever it is. And that way, you don't have to try to count paces and count how many you've gotten to. It's just a little bit easier to kind of keep track of where you're going. We did quite a few times where we would know how far and we want to do a pace count, even if it's always a very rough estimate. It's really hard, especially off trail, to keep that pace consistent, but it definitely gets you in a better area. The better you get at that, the closer you're getting to your target before you have to start doing like a search or something like that.
Absolutely.
So, all right, well, I'm gonna look at my notes here. We're just gonna get into the match. This was 6 land nav points in the match and 8 stages, which I think everyone loves shooting more stages. So that worked out really well. So the first thing you started off with was point alpha. So so I got a note here. Go on.
So basically what happens is that each team rolls up to the start line and you know nothing. You all obviously have your equipment, everything ready to go, but when you get your start time, that's when they reveal the point alpha to you and your team, and that's your first objective, get to point alpha. So you get your start time hits, the position point alpha is revealed to you, and then it's upon you and your partner to go ahead, get those coordinates down, mapped out, figure out where it's at, and get moving over there.
Yeah. So what we did is we saw that there was on the map, kind of in front, there was a place where we could see a road went, and then the road kind of veered off to like the right. So we knew that if we got to that point, we would figure out what azimuth we had to shoot. So the direction, using the compass, using our map and protractor and compass. And from that point, we said, okay, we're going to go this azimuth, this direction, this many paces. And this is the one where Nick kind of shot in. He found a good entrance. I found a really poor entrance, and it took a couple shots. But I got through. Nick got to about his pace count, and right there was where our first point was.
Exactly. And a thing that we did there is kind of a search and methodology thing, especially when you have two folks there. As long as you're in like shouting visual distance, it works out all good. And with the point that our entry point was a little bit slimy, we knew we basically did what's called attack points. So we knew the area where it was at, and we knew based off our map, intersection of roads, the different pieces of terrain there. We basically boogied on over to that attack point, to that known area on a map, and then we navigated from there. So that attack point was a pinch slimy, maybe off by 25-ish meters. So in the woods, that could be a bit. But from there, we got our attack point. We knew the distance and the azimuth of where it was going to be. In our case, it was a nice, easy 90 degrees. So went 90 degrees off from our attack point, and we just basically went side by side-ish until we can find it, just to expand our footprint and our search pattern out there.
Yep. And that was a lot of them were, that's kind of the way to do it. And as Nick's saying, so you get a map, and I'm going to kind of show here, and Nick's got some of our trails and stuff marked on this, or trails that you can either see on the map, because sometimes maps have trails. Sometimes if you get like aerial, you can even go on Google Maps. There's other mapping apps online too. But you can see trails from the air, game trails, stuff like that. So that helps. But the thing to keep in mind is all of this stuff changes. So they're not doing new maps every year, every 6 months. There's big gaps. So your map may not be accurate. It may not be up to date. And on top of that, even if it's up to date, when you're talking the scale we're talking about, ours is 1 in 25,000. I think the map the competitors used was 1 in 50,000. It's not showing. It looks like a straight line, but there may be 2 or 3 bends. It may waver. I mean, there's really a skill and a practice in like looking at a map and understanding that what exactly is on that map is not always what you're going to see in real life. So. For instance, if there is trails and you can kind of see it from space, if they had a controlled burn and they just burn up all the underbrush, which I know they do some controlled burns down that way, your things are going to look way different. There's going to be all kinds of trails all over the place that from game and different things or it may just burn up the original trail and you can't see anything. So that's why when he says it was a little slimy, where the road veers off on a cornfield or something is not always going to be exactly where it is.
Correct.
So
if we want, I can pull up the map and kind of give
absolutely, yeah.
Sure. All right, let me go ahead and share screen real quick. All right. So what we have here is the digital representation of the map before it prints it out. We have our start point, and we have our RP here, the rally point. These, before you start as a competitor, these are the only 2 points that you know with grids before you start. So you start off at your start point, you're given your first point. Here's our snail trail of what the route we did. And point A was over here. So what we ended up doing was we knew that we plotted it, both Ryan plotted it, I plotted it, and then we convened together and confirmed that our notes were good. So when we confirmed that, hey, we didn't goof up, we're both on the same page, awesome. So we have agreed consensus and good confidence as to where our point's going to be, which is somewhere around here. So we knew that these red lines here are the property lines. So here's the widths, this is the widths, and this is all kind of game trail. I'm sorry, the state game lands all the way out here. And I have this solid line here is the big hardball, which is the big road. That's our northern boundary. for the line navigation. So on this side of the road, the northern side is where we're shooting. On the southern end is going to be navigation. So we had our start point. We had our first point alpha somewhere over here. And we knew that it was going to be in here. So we see a nice intersection of a nice property line and these little trails that I hand jammed out myself, and like, cool, it's at a nice intersection. That's a very easy point we can get to. Let's attack it. So we went to it and we got a pace count, and we're like, cool, it's effectively, if this road continued on all the way through, we go through. So it was in, I think it was 200 meters, or not even 200 meters, something like, 100 yards, but 100 yards in. So that's when we kind of did a search pattern, found it, got back out, and followed it to our next objective. Do you have anything?
Yes. No, that was great. Yeah. So
Cool.
After Alpha, they send you to the control point, which has got marked on there. Is that what it's called? The control point?
It was called an RP
or
rally point.
Yeah, rally
Yep.
point. Sorry. So from there they sent us off to our first stages. And like I said, they'll say you go down that road and follow the signs, and you'll just follow along, and it'll have arrows saying, to stage 1. So stage 1, both shooters started prone and on target. So you could be down, locked and loaded, pointing at your first target. On the start beep, the first shooter would neutralize the target 3 times. Then the second shooter does the same thing. You do this for 4 targets. So this was really, if your team did it well, and we shot this pretty well. I should bring up the scores, but it's just 1, 2, 3, and then the next guy. As soon as it's done, if you're communicating, if you're paying attention, I mean, really, as soon as my third shot was on target, Nick was there shooting. Hey, I think I shot first and he shot second.
Yeah,
Whoever.
You kicked off the shooting on that, and the idea was you get your 3 hits, and as soon as your third shot breaks, and I confirm that's a hit, and I remember you brought him out nice and easy. So with the cadence and everything on that, like, cool, he's already on it. As soon as that third shot from his breaks, I'm not waiting for the ring. I'm just shooting, and that paid off. So I started shooting my 3, and in that time I was shooting my 3. You transitioned to second target. You hear me hit my 3. Then as soon as my last shot breaks, that's when you go ahead and cycle through that. So
yeah. And that's definitely as long as you're paying attention and you were on, that was a good way to do it. But you had to pay attention, and this was one of those, like a lot of this match and a lot of matches, it was better to get your hits at a good cadence than just start ripping shots, missing here and there, and your partner doesn't really isn't keeping up. So that was trying to bring up. I know I got the score somewhere. Not that it really makes a difference, but
just helps contextualize too, and also highlight some different things later down the line.
Yeah. Well, we did have hit one little struggle.
We'll get there.
Yeah, but we shot. Actually, I felt really good about it. I felt we were land nav. All right, so on that stage, we shot 5th.
Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, 7th.
7th. Hey, top 10. We'll take it.
Yeah.
But despite that,
so to give you that was a 25-second stage. I mean, we shot that in 25 seconds. So that's more what I was going for. It's a quick burner stage.
Absolutely. And same deal. Like, it's just not outrunning the mental clarity between you and your partner. That's not necessarily a stage that needs verbal speaking or anything for that, because cadence is there. You guys are cognizant on the same page. Easy day.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so after that one, we headed to stage 2.
Yep.
We did really well on this one. This was a really fun one. So they had you in a tree line, kind of on one side of a pond, and on the other side of the pond, there was one steel target. So the first shooter started shooting, and as soon as they were starting to shoot, the next shooter was like a bounding fire. The next shooter could run to their next position. So I think you started on that one.
I did. And so with that one, I started out proned out, eyes on the target. When we had a buzzer, that's when I made that very first shot. So there was no, the starting position was whatever you wanted. So at that point, why not be crosshairs on target, ready to go? Just saving some time on that end. Yep.
So as soon as it broke, I went running. And the great thing is, I mean, Nick shot it fast enough. I didn't have a ton of time to get there and in position, but you've got time while your partner's shooting to do that. So he starts shooting. I run over there. I had a really good tree I could brace on. Actually had a little limb, and just butt up against it like a barricade. And as soon as he was done, he'd holler out, and then I'd start breaking my shots. 1, 2, 3, and as I'm doing that, Nick's running to his next position. So I think there was 4 positions, right? Each shooter had 2.
I believe there were 4. I'm just looking at the imagery right now. I think it was 4 positions total. So, yeah, it was 4.
Yeah, and I believe we got second on that stage.
Yeah, and on that, I do not recall me ever saying clear or go or anything like that, because I do distinctly remember hearing as I'm moving, hearing those hits. So I was able to kind of balance out the movement along with just keeping my ears out for what my pre-positional task were going to be.
And I'll say it's nice. So Nick's a good solid shooter. I'm a fairly solid rifle shooter. So like knowing that your partner's getting their hits and kind of hearing that, not hearing someone go to war and trying to pay attention, like, are they hitting or not? I mean, we didn't drop a lot of shots. So if they were taking a shot, we were taking the time to get our, not taking our time to get our hits, but we're making good shots. So it makes it easier.
Generally speaking, if there's a shot happening, there was going to be a response from steel after that. So if I was hearing 3 shots, pretty good odds that we were completed or effectively nearly completed. So what was going through my mind when I'm bounding between from tree to tree, and they're about 20 yards apart, so a little bit longer than I'm up, he sees me, I'm down, with the individual movement techniques that the spirit of the stage is kind of addressing. But again, you're able to kind of hear it, and if you're able to balance out what your partner's doing with what you need to do, that kind of lets me be like, all right, if he's saying you're in the case of you're moving and I'm shooting and I'm going to war with the target, that gives you time to understand, okay, I can get a really good position. And meanwhile, if he's still at that point, I can be in my position and still try to spot and help my buddy out. But again, that's something that necessarily needed to happen with our guys, but it's just something to go through your head as you're kind of running through these stages with a partner.
Absolutely. And if you can, we were both shooting with suppressors. Hearing steel get hit, communicating as a team, any of that is way better with a suppressor. So
absolutely.
I know sometimes running gunners are like, oh, I don't want to run a can because of weight and heat. And this is definitely a case where running a can makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
All right. So after 2, you went straight to 3. So these were all kind of back to back here.
Yeah.
And actually 4, I think we shot 4 stages, didn't we?
I'm looking through my notes right now. I think so. Yes.
Okay. So stage 3, the first shooter crawled into a trench. He pops up, shoots the first piece of steel 4 times. So there's just a piece of steel in front of that position. Once they're done, they head on to the next one. The second shooter can come in behind them and do the same thing. So he's just going to shoot 4 positions, 1 piece of steel 4 times each time. And then he went first, I followed behind him. It's like a little foxhole they've dug. It's really cool. It was kind of a pain in the butt because you had to do it with rifle and everything on. They've got barbed wire strung under it, and you're actually kind of there's a depression, so you're kind of going down. I mean, it's very cool, but it's a pain in the butt because everything's real narrow and tight, and all your web gear and guns are getting caught on everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember I went down and even being cognizant and even wearing a minimum amount of gear, it was still all right, got to be a little cognizant of my size and going through some of these barbed wire things. So it was a nice little hasty area defense sort of position, and it worked out really nice. So yeah, that stage, just as Ryan mentioned, one goes through, rocks it with a pistol, the buddy is right behind them, rocks it with pistol, and you guys kind of follow the leader, so to speak, and roll through your trench.
Yeah, and I'm not a very big guy, and that was still very tight for me. So some of the taller guys, that's what they get for being tall, I guess.
Good.
So yeah, exactly. So and we did okay. I think it looks here we got 16th. So that's like a 60
okay,
second.
yeah.
I think you could Yeah, I don't know what the fastest was there. That was probably a 45, 50 seconds if you really.
I would say sub 30 at the absolute best. I definitely
Yeah,
I
yeah.
recall in that stage. I definitely had a little bit longer delay in the initial entry, but
Yeah, it
either
looks.
way,
Yeah, I'm seeing 54 seconds was the fastest. So, I
54.
mean, it
Okay.
was. Yeah, and I think it's all that climbing through. The shooting is fast when you pop up.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, it's the steel is like meatball. I mean, it's like a
exactly. The
full
shooting,
size steel plate at 50 or 10 yards, 7 yards.
yeah,
I
the
mean, it's
shooting
not far.
wasn't very technical or difficult at all. It was just the methodology going inside and actually moving. So that's a huge factor on this stage in particular.
And I forgot to mention you're hot holstering every time
Right.
you go to move.
Yep.
So you got to add some time for that. And I don't know about everybody. When I'm holstering in general, I'm not rushing. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm trying to be efficient, but I'm looking it
Being
in.
deliberate.
We're doing one thing at a time. So
Right.
I'd rather add time than ND or worse, So
Absolutely.
so yeah, that was that stage. That was a fun one.
That was.
And the next one is where we get into a little bit of heartbreak.
Yeah, a little bit.
But this was
It's
one
a
of
fun
the
stage.
coolest. This was one of the coolest stages. The last 2 years I've shot this match, there's always one or two stages, and I think Ellis has a little bit more help on this one. They do some really, really elaborate stages. I remember there's like almost like a sandbag. There's like a castle last year, like
Yes.
walls that they built that was really cool. Obviously the trench stage is really, really cool too. But this one, the person actually built like this big walled trap house looking with like they had a really solid door there. And one of the guys, Corey, what was Corey's last name?
Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
I'm so sorry.
Oh
I'm
my
forgetting
gosh.
his name.
He's gonna watch this, and we're gonna get so much crap
I know.
from him
I feel
now.
bad. He built this amazing. He built two of them.
Yep.
Battering ram, like incredible battering ram that you used. So the stage started with the battering ram at like 45 yards, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't really that far, 35,
Yep.
45 yards. And I was a rifle shooter. Nick was going to be the pistol shooter. So you had to start with the battering ram behind it. So what we actually did is, and I think the team before us did this, on the beat, Nick put the battering ram down. I rested my rifle on it. You had like two fairly small pieces of steel that you had to put two shots in. So 2 and 2. Once that was done, I had to run forward. Nick had to come behind me. And once you got a little bit closer, there was two or three. Let's see if my notes. Two paper targets that you had to neutralize that were wearing shirts.
Right.
So you can't see where your hits are. And you have to shoot it on the move. So there's a certain bush they've got spray painted. And while you're shooting, you have to be in motion. So you can't just stop. So I put hits on that. And then my last target on that, I drop magazine and shoot one more time just to empty the magazine, empty the gun.
Right.
From that point, at a certain area, I have to go down on the ground. I'm hit. My legs hit. Nick does a buddy drag. So he drags me and still this 40-some pound battering ram up to the door of this trap house. Puts a tourniquet on my leg, and it has to be right. You have to put it on, wrap it around a couple times so it's tight. And it was fairly tight.
Windlass.
Yeah, windlass, yeah. So once he does that and they say that's good, he takes the battering ram, bust open this door, and there's a bunch of paper targets on the other side. Some of them have weapons or something. They're all white. Some of them have things that are not weapons. So maybe there's hands. Maybe there's a person with a cell phone. Maybe there's, and you have to decide which ones are shoots and no shoots, which is it should be pretty obvious. In this case, the people designing the stage did a wonderful job of sticking a person with an iPhone smack dab in the middle of the door. So as soon as you kick it open, it is you bring that gun up. It is the first thing you see.
So the first thing you see coming in. So for everyone, these are 4 targets, right? So you bust in a door. Target 1, 2, 3, and 4. Target 1, armed, cool, burn him down. Target 2, I'm geeked up. I bust down a door, burn down a target. I'm going for the other one. And right as I break my second shot, I'm like, oh, that's an iPhone. All right. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to continue to stage. But as soon as I went through, I'm like, yep, that's a DNF. So it's like no use wasting any more time here. We completed a stage, of course, but there's a guy with an iPhone, a few holes in him, and now we DNF that stage. So that was unfortunately a 0 on our part for score.
No hostage, no problem.
That's right. Well, if they didn't have an iPhone, if I shot the iPhone, there would be no evidence of it. So
that's what I told him. Yeah, we need to just shoot the iPhone.
This is C-class. It's a C-class talk right now.
But still a really fun class or stage. We shot it pretty well. When you're doing stuff like this, you've got to be shooting fast if you want to do well, but you've also got to be thinking. And sometimes the trigger outruns the brain, and sometimes the brain outruns the trigger, and that's just kind of the nature of it. So still a very fun stage, and I mean it was a very cool design. That whole elaborate thing, I hope to see that at other matches because that was really cool. So so after this point, we are heading back to the rally points, and from that point they give you Bravo and Charlie.
Right.
We decided, and especially because we had Nick's map here, we decided we were going to hit Charlie first, and then go to Bravo. Nick can get the map up here. But a big part of that is that we saw Bravo. There is, like, as flat as this area is, there's really two kind of in the air, big distinct areas. There's a giant power line cut that goes through this whole area, and there is a cell phone tower that you can see from a good chunk of the property. Well, Bravo was right near the cell phone tower. So our thinking is if we hit Charlie first, we'll just walk in the general direction until we see the cell phone tower and beeline that way. So Nick can kind of show you how we decided to do that.
And I can kind of give us some background. So within that, I actually don't have it marked on the map here. That would be really useful now. But hey, here we are. So with the hand-drawn map that I had, I drew a couple trails that I could see from imagery and that I recall from, of course, being around our property here. So little familiarity with the ground truth here. So I knew that we would need to go down this trail for a certain distance. And then from there, we'd go ahead, take, hit the trail, do a right face, and then go into the woods. So we found it, I think it was around here-ish, because from there, we found it and we're like, cool, we need to find the cell tower now, because once we found this point, we know that our next attack point is the cell tower, and we could see that thing for a while. That's like the most distinctive physical land feature, at least vertical physical land feature.
Except once you got in the woods there.
Correct. So this little bit of us kind of trailing through, like, okay, we know we need to go back to the road at some point, and then that's when we see the tower, and then we kind of navigate around, and then we find our point chilling at the the southeast corner of the tower here. And
this was another one. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. Go for it.
I was just say, this is one, when we got off the road there, we were on a trail, but we still used pace count at that point.
Absolutely.
So we pace counted until we got to where we knew we had to turn off the trail. And then at that point, I don't think we did. I don't think we might have shot an azimuth from there too.
From here, it's a little fuzzy now, because I do recall that we definitely did a pace count from the road to where we wanted to go in, because the idea was that we just wanted to basically do a nice and easy turn into the woods. So we did a really heavy pace count here, just to make sure that our entry point was actually sufficient with the pace count that we established.
Yeah, I think we had a pace count and an azimuth for that as well, because I know in the past I've tried similar things to less success.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Land Nav is one of those things, taking a couple minutes, or not minutes, a couple seconds, 30 seconds to a minute now to like make sure your points are plotted well, figure out an accurate distance, figure out an accurate azimuth, pays dividends.
Absolutely.
Well, I think if we go here and just kind of turn off at a 90 degree, we'll find it. Because once you don't find it when you think, then you
Now
start
what?
second guessing everything. Yeah.
And
So
the second guessing part, once chaos is just chilling at your door, wanting to break it down, and all the
yeah,
pre-planning that you do, especially in the comfort of the RP, or the comfort of I know exactly where I'm at. You do your due diligence there, you build your confidence there, and then when you're actually out in the field in a place where maybe you're not as super sure as where you're at, you have that confidence in the plan and with what you establish in there. So it allows you to kind of really remove all those chaos variables trying to knock down your door, and ultimately be confident and now outrun anything while you're in the woods.
absolutely. And we'll talk later about a time where our plan, we had put a good plan in place. We were not 100% sure when we got to that point, and kind of what we did to verify that we were at, because that took a little bit more time. But we may have found it without, because I ended up, my gut was right on that, but it could have been very wrong, and then we would have just been wandering around in pretty thick brush. So it was definitely worth taking that time both times.
Yeah, for sure.
All
let's
right.
see. So we found it was Point Bravo, I think, for this guy, because we hit Charlie, then Bravo. And Bravo, there's a piece of intel over there. What was the intel?
It was a javelin missile. There's a little briefcase kind of thing that had a picture of a javelin missile in it. And it said like the priority item and then a picture of a javelin missile.
Right. And from there, we got guidance from there to return back to the RP, which for our next set of orders, which was to go ahead and do a next series of stages, right?
Yep. So so we just hit that road and booked it on back. So as fast as we could. This was a very, I don't think we mentioned earlier, this was a very warm weekend, and it was very hot and humid. So from there, we went back to stage 5. So in this one, shooter 1 runs over to a box and shoots multiple steel targets a number of times with pistol. So this is one of those, I didn't write down all the super specific how many times. Oh, and I didn't know because Nick shot that.
Yes.
So Nick ran over, shot that a couple targets with pistol. While he was doing that, I was climbing up, or I was already up inside like a deer stand type thing. They had a ladder going up there. And while he was doing that, I was shooting rifle, and there was 4 steel targets with 2 hits each. And then once each shooter finished, and this is where it took some communication, because I had to know, he had to bring back an item. If you saw the priority item, in his case, he grabbed it right away. If you didn't, you either had to guess or grab it. If it was the wrong one, you'd have to go back.
Right.
So normally, I don't think we said at the beginning, normally missing if you failed a checkpoint or a land nav point, like decided you couldn't find it, decided it was taking too long, it's an hour penalty.
Correct. Yeah.
In this case, if you missed it, which I would be surprised if anyone missed it, but I didn't look into that because the tower was pretty easy. But if you missed it, you would have lost the priority item and that checkpoint. So it could have cost you a little bit more time. But once he got back there and I was clear, I yelled down to him and he shot like a stop plate.
Exactly.
So I saw some people. So it was a little tricky. When you climbed up there, you had a ladder right in front of you that was like perfect kneeling height. So you could kneel right on that ladder and see all 4 targets, but at least 1 or 2 on your far right was like a very slim edge, even from that ladder. So it was like really hard to see. It was just like the very left edge. Whereas when I was getting in position at first, if you go over to the left side of the door, it opened up so much more of the target. So I know people, I talked to people that successfully shot it from that ladder. But I think maybe I saw a video of someone. But really, if you stepped over, because they were fairly big targets, if you stepped over to the left of the door and just rested on that door, it probably would have been quicker because
like on the left side vertical frame of the door.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of use your hand and rest in there. And it was there was a lot more target to shoot. I think you still were pretty stable. They were pretty large. I think that was probably better way to shoot it, but again, it's as long as you get your hits. You know, if you got your hit on that little sliver, you were fine. But I think it was a little bit better to go to the left there.
It definitely makes sense. It's also very, very much I'm going to present you something in a silver platter, but little do you know, it's not exactly what you want. So yeah, good.
It's worth, if you can find targets off the clock, and in this case you could. I could get up there and make sure that I identified all 4 targets, because they're kind of hidden in high brush and trees and, you know, poking out behind trees. We've said it before on this show. Run time is cheap. Shoot time is expensive. We've got like 90 seconds, a minute, 120 seconds to shoot. If I spend 10 seconds having to find a target on the stage, that is 90 seconds. That's a lot of time. For 90 seconds on runtime, in a match like this, that's 3 or 4 hours out there. It's nothing. So always, if you can find your targets and really understand where they're at before ever, getting beeped in. So anything else you want to add about that?
No, that stage, like Ryan is saying, before you hit the start time, like, be very clear about what the stage is. You don't want to be asking questions on the clock. Again, your time is very expensive and runtime is cheap in comparison. That doesn't give you an excuse to be inefficient, but balanced appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good example of that. And I know Nick does this because I didn't even have to say anything. We just both do it. But when you're coming up to a stage, they're always, almost every match, they're going to ask to see your rifle show clear. So as I'm coming up to a stage, I'm locking my bolt back. My mags are already like where they need to be. I've got a fresh rifle and pistol mag on my belt, because you don't know what you're coming into. Have fresh rifle pistol mags like on your belt. Have your mags, if you're wearing a chest rig, have those where, whatever, have your stuff ready so that you're ready to do what you need to do. Don't be walking up and show clear. Oh, here, let me pull my rifle. I mean, that's just wasting time. You could be doing 2 things.
When you're at the stage, your priority should be how to do the stage. If you're putting in variables of, I need to reindex my mags or something like that, you're taking a lot of bandwidth away from what you could be doing before the stage. So definitely come there prepared and ready to roll, because you don't know where you're going to come upon when you get to the stage.
Yep, and I would say most people are walking as they come up. I'd say if you're not one of those guys running the whole match beginning to end, like when you get close, even if you're running a good deal of the match, when you get close, like walk that last 20 or 30 yards, let your heart rate drop a little bit. Yep. That's a perfect time to rack the bolt back so it's empty, so you got an empty chamber and all that. So we are on to stage 6. This one was, I think I know what happened in this stage, but even after shooting it, I'm really not 100% sure. This had a very high DNF rate. We did pretty well at it. I was actually pretty happy on it. But they got there. Yeah, they got there and they just said,
it's like, all right, when do you guys start crawling? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. All right, so I just started like crawling and
crawling towards a barricade.
Yeah, about, I don't know, 20 yards from where we were, like, oh, who's crawling? I'll go. And then as soon as I got to the gate, or as soon as I got to the barricade, timer went off and it was game time, and there was a radio, and I was like, all right, cool. I guess I need to listen to instructions.
And they're crawling forward. They're not, I can't remember how much he told me, but like, I know I had the radio and there was like a spotting scope there that I could help spot for him. Mm-hmm. But then past that, it was like, you couldn't look at the card. So as soon as the beep went off, you could look at the card, and then I had to explain what target to shoot and how many times, which Ellis has done versions of this at a couple of his team matches. I think it's a really interesting way, because you see how well people communicate together or don't in a lot of cases. So in this case, I'm like, far left target 3 times or something like that. So Nick then is finding that target. I'm trying to find it in the spotting scope. He's getting his hits. Let me know if he neutralized it. I'm counting how many times he's hit it. And then once he's done, I'm telling him what the next one to go to. I think, were there 3 targets on this?
There was a left, right, and center. The center one was like the most was the most difficult, at least for the time that we were on it, for me to find personally. It was just in
And
the
I
right
couldn't.
amount of shade. But I know the
Yeah,
lighting was
I
kind of
couldn't.
variable, so it depends on the time
Yeah,
of
and
day you were there.
I never saw it with the spotting scope. Like I don't.
Okay.
Maybe you could have from that position, but for whatever reason, like I kept looking. Luckily, Nick
Yeah.
found it before me.
I barely saw
So
it, but I managed to find it. And on that end, me coming here, I knew I had to load. So I loaded and I had a radio and listened to the instructions. And in the short amount of time it took Ryan to go ahead, uncover. I never saw the sheet myself. I still haven't, so I don't know what was on it. But it took him like a quick second to be like, okay, here's what I got. Now I need to transcribe it to my shooter. And the instructions he gave really easy. Like, hey, left side target. It was like what, 3 hits, I think.
it was like diamond far left. It was 2
Yep.
hits. I have
Yeah.
the torso on the right was 4 hits, and then the torso in the middle was 3 hits.
That's right. Okay.
So
And
once Nick did that, then they told me to go forward, which Nick, I don't even think, like, I didn't know that until like, oh, you can go now. So I went running forward. And then they were like, you got to shoot the same targets in the same amount that Nick just did. So then in my head, like, I didn't know I needed to memorize this. So I'm trying to think, like, oh, crap, I need to, like, hopefully I can remember. And then I have to find and remember this, which I ended up remembering each one, which, you shoot enough matches, you kind of get a
idea.
Get used to that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was kind of it was a little, I like the stage on RO. I think they cleaned the execution up a little on competitor day. On RO day, it was a little chaotic, and I could see if you struggled with the shooting part, and they were 200 yards, maybe 150, 200 yards. It wasn't easy. It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't easy.
There, like the timing there. If you didn't know what you're doing, you're very likely to DNF it. And if you messed up any portion of those many the recipe there for a successful stage, if you messed up any part of that, you had a relatively slim margin to recover. So on our case, we definitely went through, I think, probably pretty optimal in terms of the movement, in terms of the communication. Where I only like when we were on the radio, you were giving me instructions. I didn't need to tell you, okay, Roger that. You got my acknowledgement through the hits on steel. And
yeah,
you said them clearly. I had the volume up. You said them clearly. So, like example, when I got the radio, I knew it was going to do it to Baofeng, so I immediately twisted the volume up all the way just in case. And it happened to be up all the way. Excellent, cool. And you gave clear instructions. Those instructions were very clear to me, and it was just a matter of finding the targets and following the instructions. So you said them clear to me, followed through. You went through and happened to remember them and followed through. So really good execution on both ends for sure. And if anything within that bit was messed up, there was a slim margin to actually complete the stage.
Yeah, because I'm looking. I think we were second on that stage.
Okay, nice.
But the fastest time on that was 119 seconds, almost 120 seconds.
Wow,
and we
nice.
were 123. So if you figure the par time on that must have been like 180 or something like that.
Maybe. I mean, I don't
remember. It has to, the highest one I see.
It has to be 180, but
yeah.
Normally you don't.
160.
Normally 180 isn't a thing that we do all the time. So
yeah, but the fastest or the slowest was 160. 161
okay.
is the slowest time I saw that passed. There's a lot of DNF, so it must have been 180. But like for a 120-second stage is like the fastest. I mean, that kind of illustrates how tough that stage was to shoot because, I mean, when we got through there on RO day, I think we were the second team. We were later in the day, and I still think we were the second team to clear it.
Right.
So we got up there. They're like, yeah, no one's clearing this. And we're like, yeah, I guess we'll do what we can.
As a challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, fun stage. Last year in that same place, the stage was similar distance targets. I think there was more positions, but it was a tough stage last year too. So doable, but you had to do your stuff.
Yep.
All right. So
and then,
7. Yep, go on.
Oh yeah. So then from there, at the end of the stage, you get a selection of different items for you to pick up and move and bring down to the next stage, which was stage 7.
Yep.
Yep.
So they had like powder ammo or gunpowder canister, like I don't know, probably a 30-pound. I don't know if it was full, but
probably like 30, 40 pounds, something like that. But it's like a big,
yeah,
think of like the big blue barrels that you have. Imagine if that was cut into like a quarter. It's
yeah,
about the same diameter, but about a quarter of the height, filled with like sand.
Yeah, like bigger ammo can type, or
Yep.
kind of cans with handles, and then like a sandbag.
Yeah, we had he had a normal like 20 liter 20-liter
Yeah,
jerry cans, and five
yeah,
gallon jerry cans for water, and then the normal obligatory sea bags filled with
yeah,
sand, and
yeah.
each team member would select one item, bring it down to the next stage. So it was a little bit downhill, and probably what 150,
75.
100 yards,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that.
100 yards. Yeah,
100
probably
yards,
100
yeah.
yards. Yeah, it was probably not 200, but yeah, probably over 100.
Yeah, definitely over 100, under 2.
Yeah, so 7 is the stage we worked during that weekend. It's actually the same stage I worked last year, and
Mhm.
the same exact stage, which I don't blame him for reusing it, because both years it ate a whole lot of lunch, and it's a very fun stage. So one shooter has, well, you decide who's shooting what. One shooter is the precision shooter, and they're shooting precision headshots. So they have, I don't know, it's right around 200 yards. Maybe just, I think we lased it at like 180 or something like that.
Yeah, like 185, 186,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yep. So maybe an 8-inch round, and there's 3 of those next to each other. The other shooter is shooting a kind of full size IPSC that is out there in front of them, and that is they got to shoot that 5 times. So the precision shooter gets his hit on that smaller target. The next shooter, as soon as he gets that hit, he can shoot, and he neutralizes that 5 times. Once he's done with that, shooter 1 shoots his second target. Once he neutralizes that, shooter 2 shoots 5 more times, shoots a small target 5 more times. So one guy has got 3 mandatory hits. The other guy's got 15 mandatory hits. You're on a road. A lot of people chose to go, I think, going prone. Let me put it this way. Going prone was the way to do this stage. Nick was there the whole weekend. We can talk a little bit about it, but you could almost tell from the get-go who was going to pass the stage, who wasn't, or who had a good chance of it. Because one, if they tried to shoot offhand like people did, or do some kind of half kneeling, I think some people were worried about the
brush,
the higher brush and stuff in front of you. But again, off the clock, we let people the whole weekend. You had the chance to get down in position, get a sight picture, figure out where you wanted to shoot from. Some people chose not to do that. Nope, I'll just go. Okay,
understandable. The spirit of doing it blind.
Absolutely, I think some people were tired, but from a gaming, if you have the opportunity, I say if you have an opportunity to check out a shooting position before you need to use it, whether it's in a game or life, I would definitely do that. Don't just throw a tree stand up and expect that you're going to climb up to the top and like have every shooting lane available to you, because you may not. So yeah, this was a case of the there was an old saying in 3-gun, if you can go prone, go prone. This was 100% for this match. If you could go prone, go prone.
Absolutely.
And if you did that, it really wasn't that hard of a stage. I mean, they were fairly generous targets.
The shooting wasn't, I would call, very technical. It did eat lunches, and I do think that the culprit was the left of bang, the left of beep, stuff that folks may or may not have done, and and folks that definitely went ahead and surveyed the position, surveyed the site with the free time given to them. Well, not free, but the less expensive time given to them. And I think those folks were definitely more likely to complete the stage in a good time, or just outright complete it. And honestly, just knowing your holds and even knowing target distances, arbitrarily for other shooters,
it was deceptive. It was deceptive there.
Yeah, because you are shooting across a water feature, and there is a little bit of your eye kind of loses its ability to range across water, some other uniformly whatever factor. But we got estimates for folks after the clock, like ranges all the way up to, we had like 250 as one, and then we had another that was like 120, and even with 5.56, to be honest, with those size of targets, the holds would not have been that much different, but exaggerated holds based off an incorrect range estimation could lead to really consistent misses that may have been a culprit for a lot of people.
Yeah, the estimation, that was definitely one of it. I think not preparing well enough, as we said, was definitely another one. There was definitely some communication. If you weren't listening to those hits from your partner, communicating, letting them know, hey, you can shoot, definitely also helped in that case. I mean, this would not. I don't know that we did a lot of talking, but I think, when I was done, I would.
I don't think we spoke at all.
Yeah. So other times at stages like this, though, I would holler out, hey, shoot or whatever. Just because it's worth. It's worth.
You did a precision. I did a 3-fer. Yeah. I did a 3-fer, and so as soon as I would hear a hit from you, because the entire time I was zeroed in on that torso target, whereas Ryan would shoot the plate, the array of 3 pieces of steel. So I hit my 3, he do his precision. As soon as I hear precision, cool. Hit the accelerator, get 3 hits. So that one I don't think required communication.
No.
Verbal communication. Short of if you have problems, I can transition and maybe like try to spot for you. That
at
also,
least with a can.
Yes.
With a can. If you're not shooting a suppressor, it may be harder to hear that. That was something else I saw. Like, once I shot my first target, I'm over and like on that next target, like finger not prepping the trigger, but like ready that as soon as his shot goes, I'm ready to break my shot. And I saw people not doing that, like not focusing on other things. It's like right now, I need to focus on is get this first target. As I'm listening, I'm getting ready to the next one, because as soon as his shot, as soon as I hear that third hit, I want to break my shot. I don't want to have to like hear that and then like, oh, now I got to settle in and get my breath or do whatever it is. Like, when you got time and your partner's doing something, be ready to shoot. Like, if you're not ready to shoot, you're doing something wrong. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And gotta give credit to the weights too that we carried through, because I do think that did play a part in really kind of, extracting some souls a little bit, where they were need to be that smoke coming down on top of all the distance they may have moved from there. So that definitely added a little bit of flavor to the mental game on the clock and off the clock.
You probably had 7, 8. You could have had 7 or 8 miles at that point, pretty easy.
Absolutely.
So yeah. All right. So after that one, you were, and I do have a note, as I said before, this is definitely a stage with that high brush. If you can get a sight picture before, I think we said that, take advantage of it, because that was the big thing. I had a note there. So after that, you go back to the CP, and from the CP, they give you points Delta and Echo. So this is actually, we had one, this is the same amount as last year. There were still 5. Yeah. So they gave us Delta and Echo. So Delta is behind a pond. So if you've got your map, you plot your point right. A pond's a pretty good piece of terrain to find. There's a path that kind of leads up along it. That was pretty easy to find. So we went straight to Delta, no problems there. Echo is actually further down, and this is actually, I was glad Nick, he'll go back to our thing. To make these maps small enough to where they really fit into a pouch or something without, I folded this one after we were done with it, but to not have to fold it and do all this stuff, he made it small. Well, he had this one thing. He's like, I don't know if we're going to go all the way out this far, but we've got a second map, and we absolutely went out. This last point was on that one.
So, so with that end, that first point, so pulling up our snail trail here real quick, that was the second to last point was down here. We knew it was like the southeast south end of this lake, of this little pond. We know that there's a trail right here, so that was an easy thing to go from our RP, hit the road, hit that trail, bang it, follow it down to see a point somewhere in like the little undergrowth here, and that was an easy day. And then our last point was out over here. And same deal where we were going to go ahead and hit our attack point. And our attack point in this case was follow this road and we hit this little T-junction. And again, these are hand-drawn, just using imagery and of course kind of mentally confirming with just, historical background on the site. We know that there's a trail around here. And we found a trail here on the map, and that trail coincides with how it is on the ground. Thanks, imagery. And we knew it's somewhere like down here. And so what we did from there is from our attack point from here, bring us all the way down here. We knew that from here to here, we'd have to basically go on here. I think it was like 700-ish, 700
Sounds
meters.
700 meters, I think.
Yeah. And so from there, this is when when Ryan and I, we went ahead to use a combination of our pace counting along with a rangefinder too. And the pace counts and all that, both of those proved invaluable to what's going on next. Do you want to kind of carry it on from there? We can add in as we go.
Yeah. So, and let me add, because there was another route other people, now I know there's at least two routes. I think one route is people went right off that road and just tried to dead reckon straight through all that brush. I saw at least one person while we were out there. It looked like they were trying that. That would not be my first choice. The other is the big power line cut. So this is where all the ROs camp, but that's a pretty distinct thing. And then at the bottom, there's a trail that you should just be able to go straight. So you could have taken that down and then cut. Either of those worked. I know it gets a little swampy near that power line cut, so we kind of chose to come in from the other direction. And this trail is a good example. Like, it looks like it just kind of goes and then just kind of veers and then kind of cuts. It looks like it would be really easy to follow. There's actually a lot more bends in it than you would see from the sky. And as we found, kind of where we split off, there was another trail there. So that didn't really show well on the map. Yeah, so he's kind of... So what we did is we got to our point where we had pace counted, which is almost where we were turning off. Right? Yeah, right around there.
Exactly. Yep.
But because there was another trail and everything going on, we said, we're not 100% certain that we are where we need to be for our azimuth to shoot off into the woods. And it gets pretty thick there, so you don't want to just start walking in the woods. Now, we did know on the map there shows like a dotted line of water. So it shows that during some parts of the year, it's actually a little bit lower, almost like the tree line. But there's some parts of the year there's water. Yeah, there you go. There's water there. But it's this time of year, we don't know. But anyways, we're not 100% sure. So I'm going to let Nick explain, because this is where his expertise really came in well.
Yeah, and the underlying thing here is I wanted to be clear. I wanted to have clarity, because the last thing I want to do is open my door and let chaos kind of enter in my house and make it a mess. So I wanted to make my house, preserve that my house's cleanliness and our house being lane navigation, if you will. So we ended up getting to this point in the road here, and now looking at imagery, like, there is very clearly a trail. Actually, there it is right there. Whoops.
Yeah.
Hey, lessons learned, right? So this hand-drawn feature I have didn't really count for this guy either. So when we hit our pace count, and it was our pace count between both the rangefinder and Ryan's pace count as well, pretty much on the dot. So we were both very confident that we traveled our 700-ish meters from our original attack point. So we get there and we hit a fork in the road, and we're like, okay, this is not what we're expecting, but okay. So we needed to, the problem was like, okay, there's a fork in the road. We weren't expecting it. That's okay. But it was just a question of at what point do we shoot our azimuth out from the road that we planned on to find our point. So we knew that we had to shoot an azimuth somewhere, but we didn't know exactly where on this road that azimuth was going to be. So that was where not the confusion, but where I was like, okay, hey, we need to take a pause real quick and just confirm that where we're at is good. And so what we did to do that is we did a little bit of resection, which is a land navigation deal, but this is something to help confirm our location. So we knew that we were approximately around this area-ish, maybe there. And we
Yep.
knew that the power line cut, very distinctive feature. We knew this trail went out to it. So what I did was Ryan and I boogied down the trail until we could just barely see the 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 tree
The
line.
edge of the power line cut. Yeah, the edge of
Exactly.
the power line cut.
We saw the edge of the tree line, like, cool. Okay. From my position, I'm facing this direction and I am that distance away. Okay, it's a really sloppy, really slimy resection, but hey, it works. So now I know, based off where I'm at in my map, compared to where our original attack point was for where we're going to shoot our azimuth was, it actually turned out to be right at the fork on the road. So
yeah, and to add, Nick like he shot his laser rangefinder to that, and then we figured out that distance. So when he shot his laser rangefinder and I used pace count back, I mean, we pretty much, again, our pace count was right on. We were pretty much where we left off. So
exactly.
At that point, we knew we were in the right direction.
Correct. And Ryan was definitely right when we got to that point at the fork in the road. I'm like, this isn't on a map. Our pace count's good. Ryan's like, my gut feeling says I'm good, and he is 100% he was without a doubt right on the money with that. His gut was true. Mine wasn't, and that's why we kind of went on this little bit of a wild goose chase. But it was something that ultimately, if Ryan's
worth it.
Yeah. If Ryan's gut wasn't correct, it could have led to more time chilling out and in a place maybe we didn't know. But this was just an effort to make sure that we were good. And ultimately, with that, it was extra confidence to us. We confirmed our route. We confirmed our methodology. And ultimately, we were very sure as to where we needed to go to find our point, which worked out.
And actually, it's even a little bit further down because Nick was hurting a little bit at this point.
Yep.
And I jumped in. And again, you can kind of see where the tree line's a little thicker there. And I think he showed it earlier. There is some temporary water there, but there was no water at this time of year there. This is where maybe a little, I don't want to say bushcraft still. I like outdoor stuff. I spend time. I like trees, bushes, like learning about them. Knowing what water vegetation looks like what plants grow around water and what doesn't grow around water was really useful here because I could see the definitive area where like this area gets a lot of water, at least at some point in the year, because these are things that grow around water. So that's little things like that can really help you in the long run.
Absolutely.
For doing land nav. So I ran down, grabbed that point, and then we boogied back to I think, look at my notes. I think it took us back to it took us to control point or
it took us back to the start point.
Yes, the start point. From there, they sent you to stage 8, which is over kind of in the sand pit. Yep. This was very similar to last year, but still a really cool stage. So one shooter makes 3 hits on a steel plate with their rifle. So you had to choose one rifle for this. We chose mine. I made 3 hits on the plate, grounded the rifle on the ground, on safe. We picked up a litter and ran it like 45 yards uphill. And then if you were another team, you would either the litter was there or it was 45. You had to go the same distance, but it's just whether you did your run at the beginning or the end.
Right.
Once you drop that off and you put, I think, like a sandbag dummy on the litter, ran it up, put it down, ran back. Once we got back there, I pulled pistol out and started shooting a dueling tree, just the whole side of a dueling tree, while Nick picked up my rifle, made 3 hits on that, grounded it, and then hopefully I was done at that point. He stepped up, shot the dueling tree, 1 hit for each, but he could only do weak hand, right? It was weak hand only.
I could not remember.
You didn't remember you didn't remember right off the bat either because you started shooting at it and they started yelling, "Weak hand, weak hand."
Yes, that's it now. Yep.
Part of the reason we chose that because I can do weak hand, but Nick is the stronger pistol shooter. So if you've not shot team matches before, and we talked about this while we're already leading up to it. We kind of discussed what we felt our strengths and weaknesses were. I felt like I'm a pretty confident rifle shooter. Nick felt more confident with his pistol. So during the match, if there was a choice as to who shot what, well, Nick took pistol and I took rifle, and I felt like it worked out pretty well for us in that case.
And cases like that is definitely when if you have like interchangeability between like your guns, for example, is really handy, because say, you know, we both run Glocks or something and we both have ARs, and I prescribe to be the pistol guy, you prescribe to be the rifle guy. So if we come to a stage and it's like, hey, I've been doing a lot of pistol and now I'm being asked to do pistol again, I have no problem with that. Let me just switch mags with you real quick. So things like that, we didn't need to do that just because I think we packed pretty smartly with that in mind. But definitely something to consider if you're running matches like this too, and want to lean into that sort of methodology. Just things to consider. That left of beep kind of thinking.
Yeah, I think in general, both people and both of us, when I say like my pistol shooting's not atrocious, I can hit pistol targets.
Oh no,
so, and Nick crushed rifle. Yeah, Nick crushed rifle. So it's like we were like, well, we're going to lean on our strengths a little, but you're not. I don't think you're going to win a match like this having like a top rifle shooter and a top pistol shooter, and then them not being able to shoot the other guns, because you still had to shoot pistol, you still had to shoot both. You had to shoot both, but it's worth discussing. Like, well, what, you know, I'm better positional shooter, and this guy's like, well, I'm better shooting, you know, USPSA. Like, I can shoot rifle splits like nothing. Well, just if you got the chance, lean on your strengths there.
Absolutely.
And and be familiar with other guns. I mean, he had to shoot my gun. It's a pretty conventional. I mean,
yeah, it was like an LPVO 12.5 easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like nothing's weird about it. I got a Geisley trigger. If you've never shot a Geisley trigger, everyone should have one in their guns. You know, like
I had like an ACOG, and it had like it's an M203 upper minus a 203, so I had like another it had another like T2 on the side for a 203 that wasn't there. I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too much. Let's take this on the conventional, something that both we know.
Yeah, granted, I probably could have shot it, because at the heart of it, it's an AR safety, it's an AR trigger.
Exactly.
But
it was just a thing of like, you know, let's reduce the level of variables as small as they could be. These are still variables we can control. So let's go with the thing that we're both accustomed with. So I was very happy with that.
Yeah. So, and now people shot some weird guns there, which I'm all more power to you. Yeah. Like, more power to you. I would definitely argue that it's good to be proficient. Like, you get people who are like, if I have my pistol and my rifle and it's set up exactly, I can just crush. And then you give them anything else and they're just like, oh, it's good to be confident with a whole range of gear.
Absolutely.
Like, the better shooters usually are. Nothing wrong. I mean, give me my rifle. I shoot it best, but give me someone else's rifle. And like, I'm still 95% shooting someone else's gun.
I'll be that guy that rolls up to a team match as a surprise. Like, hey, partner, I hope you like, I don't know, an F2000 or something. And the guy's like, I've never seen this before. What's a toilet bowl or something? So definitely roll in with the compatibility and like the team in mind going through. So in our case, it wasn't a big deal, and we packed accordingly for it, and it worked out well. We didn't have any ammo problems or ammo management, anything like that. So glad we had that in mind.
My FS 2000 and my Tokarov.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Shooting some like really, like, you shoot a 5.7 or something. Or
that's what I just.
I don't know.
P90. It's like the P90, and then.
Oh, you roll my P90 and a wheel gun, and you're like, all right, partner, let's do this. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm shooting a Glock and an AR.
Now, if you talk about it beforehand, and you're both gonna like I said, I think it's awesome. I mean, I saw some cool guns out there, but if you want to, we'll say if you want to do well and you want to win, it would pay to shoot normal guns like what the majority of people are shooting, or what you and your partner are comfortable with. I did see some all AK teams. Yeah.
Yeah. As a team, whatever it is, just be violently confident with what you bring. That's it.
Yeah.
And generally, that's an AR and some double stack 9mm from a reputable manufacturer, something like that. But some flavor like that. But that's not mutually exclusive.
No, absolutely not. So after that, run home. hopefully run home. It
Yeah.
was a rough, long day. We were struggling a little coming in, but it worked out.
That was a struggle on my end, sir.
Well,
You were pulling it. You were making it happen.
you did it. You did it. I like to
Yeah.
push people, and then that just I make up for it when I'm shooting with Mike Ford and he's dragging me behind. So
Yeah.
gotta take the wins when I can get them. All right, so I'm gonna go through here. Land nav learned. So I was to kind of background. I've done some land nav. I did this one last year. I've done it other matches. Taken one class. I would say, understanding of land nav. I'm still getting my confidence at land navigation. So I try to go out and practice every once in a while. I don't do it as much as I would like, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. Nick is very, very strong with land nav. He does a good deal of it. He teaches it some at some courses. So he's definitely a stronger land nav. So, and as he said, when we were plotting stuff, like I've made this mistake before. We did not let Nick plot, make plans, do everything, and I was just like the silent partner, like following behind. When they gave us a point, we both plotted it. Occasionally, we would be a little bit different, and then we would look at it and go, "Oh, okay, no, yeah, this is the actual one," and figure out. I know one time, like I plotted it, and it was like I was on one side of the road, he was on the other.
Yeah.
And like we looked at it, it's like, okay, in that case, like I plotted a little bit closer. We did.
Yep,
we
exactly.
went with the one, and other times Nick was a little bit closer. When we did our azimuths and our which I was a little rusty on that stuff. We did like azimuths or pace count. Both of us did it, and then it was like, what did you get? Okay, this is what I got. And we kind of, and if we disagreed too much, I mean, like that last echo, you're trying to do a curved line. There's a couple ways you can do it, but you could come with a little bit different, depending on how you do that. You may come out, measure it. You could come up with a little bit. We were pretty close on everything. A few things we didn't. We compared. That's huge. You know, I've made a mistake at Wolverine a couple years ago. The last Wolverine we did. We let one guy do it because he was confident, and the rest of us really didn't have as much experience then, and we struggled for it. And it wasn't his fault. You know, it was our fault for not helping him out.
It's definitely a collaborative effort, and if you're in a team, it is a team event. You're running together, you're shooting together. We're gonna plot together, so it's definitely a collaborative effort. And despite the experience here, it's an exceptionally perishable skill. And two different folks looking at a map can come up with very good reasons why they may do one thing or the other. So there's definitely a very strong argument for collaboration. Silent partner is going to be a silent and potentially a lost partner. So better to not be lost and collaborate when needed. And it's definitely a point where collaboration, despite experience levels, it's definitely a thing I absolutely advocate for.
Yeah. A good map. Obviously, they gave you a map. You did not have to make your own map. I think so Nick put a lot of work into these, and this map was absolutely helped, especially with all the stuff. I have done other land nav matches with not this much, but I would still print out my own maps because, like, for instance, I like 1 in 25K scale. Just for this kind of distance, I think in my experience that works well. I do a lot of that around here when I'm practicing, so I'm most comfortable with it. The other thing is, not that, I mean, most match directors would check this. I can print this out at home and verify that my scale matches this map too. And then I don't get there and like they printed it, it's a little wonky, and then I'm kind of guessing. And again, if you can do layers, there's a lot you can do with some even free map skills online that I think help really get you a lay of the land and give you confidence.
And so exactly in another way to frame it too is, you know, we all do our research on what next gun or firearm we want to get, or whatever piece of gear we want to do. This is within the same level of research. You know, you do your research on the area, you know where you're at, you know your operating area. Why not research it using a lot of different tools out there? And even if like that, if you don't produce a map for the event, you doing your research on it with those sort of map tools and GIS sort of things definitely helps you when you come down. You're like, okay, this road, I've been looking at my computer screen for a couple hours. Now I'm on it and I have a good familiarity with it versus you've just been handed a map. Now go off in the woods and find a a pink duct tape, placard in the forest. So approach it with like the same mentality as one would with like researching your next firearm or researching your next large purchase. Because like this is how like you do good at these sort of events, is definitely getting to practice when you can, and in some ways, sitting down looking at it on your computer screen is a way of practice, but not the way to practice. So it's one of the many parts to a balanced breakfast, if you will. I think it's probably a good way to say it.
Yeah, and I've done running guns. If I'm going to a new place, I'll just like, Cal Topo is a good place for doing maps. They have a free section that you can do a ton with.
Yep.
But Google Maps too. Like I have put in the range's address and just looked around. Okay, there's a couple creek crossings. Okay, there's looks like there's a little bit, especially if you can look on that and Cal Topo. Oh, look, there's some elevation. There may be a hill here. Or
Yep.
Look at this. There is 0 contour lines on this map. This range is as flat as Kansas. Like, okay, well, I'm going to treat that differently than if I look at one that's nothing but contour lines.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm going to be doing a lot of uphill hiking. I better prepare for that. So I think
even a scale of like, hey, I see these are very obviously berm areas, or this is very obviously a large power line cut within the property lines of the place I'm at. Okay, that might help you modulate or figure out like, I might be expecting, 300+ yard shot, or I'm, kind of where you're at on the map and where you're at on the property can help you mentally figure out what's next in store for you. So there is, you would say, a gaming aspect to that, but I treat that as like you're doing research on an objective, and the objective is the area. So that's why in this case too, we do like the really small 1 in 25K, because we know that we're not going to deviate too much at all from that area, because it's just how the way things work. So again, more gamerism in that aspect, but you're applying common sense. You're applying, not common sense, but you're applying a little bit of thought into it. That's going to really pay you a lot of dividend when it comes to game day. So I think it's really valuable that folks do approach it like that.
Absolutely. So another thing I had on here was a good plan of attack. Mm-hmm. So I'll share. Last year, one of the points, and it was really the only one you had to kind of dead wreck into that didn't have like good net terrain or trails or something leading to. Me and my partner plotted it. We're like, oh, okay, we're just going to walk down. We figured out our pace count. We're just going to walk down this road this far, and then it's just a 90-degree off the road into the woods. We didn't figure out how the pace count was, because it's like it's not really that far. Mm-hmm. But that's what we're thinking. Quick and dirty. We'll get in there. The woods were really thick. We kind of got a little confused on our pace count. 90 degrees on a road seems really obvious when you're looking on a map. When you get there in life, maybe not. And so we did get smart enough to split out. We never found the point. We went in there. It got super thick. A lot of things happened. It was not a really well thought out plan at that point. And then as there was chaos and we're kind of flustered and we were getting late in the day and yada, yada. So having a good plan of attack, definitely, and both being on the same, and we both shared plans of attack, and I think generally we went with Nick's, and I kind of deferred to his experience, but more often than not, like his thought was the same thing that I had.
Yeah, we were there on the same page.
Yeah, I used it as a learning experience because he's got a lot more experience, so I'm going to see like how he attacks things compared to like how my experience told me to attack things. So with that good plan of attack, and this is, I think, really important, is confidence. And a lot of this comes with experience, but if you do your homework, you've got a good map, you made sure that you guys plotted your point as a team, you made a good strategy, you got your pace count already planned out. I've gone out a couple times to figure out my pace count. Before this match, I did the same thing. Got my little handheld GPS, figured out 100 meters, and would just walk it, and confirm that, okay, my pace count's still in the general area. All that homework helps you to be confident so that you don't let that chaos into your house, as Nick's saying, because even when you're confident, and this is where this lesson came, because Nick's got that confidence, but we're like walking and I'm like counting the pace and it's like getting close to where it should be, and then you're not seeing it right away.
Yeah,
it's like really easy to kind of freak out and think like, did I do something wrong? But if you've done all the homework and the steps and you've got there, then you have the confidence to go, okay, we just need to do this search method, or we need to do this, and spread out. And it was never far from where we looked. We were trying to find it, but man, if you don't have that confidence, you could be, I mean, that last year, we may have been right on that point and just not have seen it, just needed 20 more steps in that direction, one way or the other. And if you don't have that confidence, you're in bad luck.
And to summarize, like the confidence aspect of it, it's like the not unfounded confidence. Like, be honest with yourself. If you're just being confident, then that's not the right kind of confidence, but the actual genuine confidence there. In the same way that, when you're going to a stage or you leave a stage, you kind of do that mental checklist of, all right, rifles on me, pistols on me, ammo's on me, water or phone or something is on me. You go through that checklist. Kind of the same thing when it comes to land navigation. You have a series, you have a certain objective, and associated with those objectives are certain tasks to enable that objective. And if you've gone through and you've hit every, crossed every T and dotted every I, then you have the confidence that, hey, the things I'm doing are reasonable and fair to, the objective I need to do. So with that in mind, that gives you the confidence to be clear and to understand what you're doing out there. So when you're in the woods, you have, you're less likely to be actually lost and more likely just to be, maybe be on a good side of the of the compass, I suppose.
Yep. And I said, I was kind of confident where we're at in that last point, but we didn't have the full confidence. So we took the time.
It wasn't a matter of trust. It was,
No. I'm not saying, I'm saying like, we weren't both on that same like confidence level. Yeah. So this was one of my other things. When in doubt, verify. When there's any doubt where you're at, stop, see what you can do to verify where you're at. There's tons of ways to do that. We had a trail we could check. Sometimes it may be, if you've got elevation that you can use, sometimes that's helpful. If you can, if you're a little more open land,
for example.
Yeah, there are things you can do, but if both of you don't have that, especially in a team match, if both of you don't have that confidence, get the confidence. Verify where you're at, and go on. Because as confident as I was, I could have been wrong, because we weren't both there. So I think that's maybe
300-ish yards of time on a trail.
Minutes.
Yeah,
maybe
potentially
5 minutes
prevented, 300 to 500 yards, 300 yards of not being on a trail and not being confident, having chaos further try to kick down your door.
Yep. So one more thing I know another thing I had was a rangefinder can be really helpful. We've talked a little bit about that. I think it's great still to verify with a pace count, because 100%. Especially in woods, if anyone hasn't used a rangefinder, usually where it's shooting and where your reticle is aren't always exactly the same. And all it takes is a little branch jutting out in front of you that you don't see to throw off your range estimation. So I think both ranging and it's just that it's double confidence.
And it's a collaborative effort. So you were doing your collaboration of doing the berry up until that point of the day, and even in that case too, your pace count was rock solid, on the money. And so only pull out the rangefinder because, hey, we've got good metric here. Let's go ahead and wrap it up with this, just so we can have two different forms of confirmation here. And that's worked out well. Otherwise, I would not be using a rangefinder. I would be doing, just for those reasons you listed alone, that there's some other variables you're inviting in to try to kick down your door when using a rangefinder. So let's go with, the thing that we have more control over.
Yeah, and we had a really wide, open trail, so he could just shoot this tree, go, and then we'd add and shoot this tree, and it's a extra check, double checking what you're doing.
It is not the tool; it is a tool.
Yep, exactly. I think I mentioned this earlier. Lots of little details and features may not be on the map or correct. So maps are great for stuff like this. You have to have a map, but you got to remember that's not gospel of exactly this moment in time. And sometimes you got to use other features. If I can shoot 2 cell towers that are on a map, and there's supposed to be a trail there, and there's no trail, but like I'm confident that I've like shot both those and they're in the right distance, and the trail's not, may have been on the map, but it's not there now. Who knows when that map was made, but like if I've got two really, really confident points and I know exactly where, then just trust that the trail's not there. It was, and they stopped using it and it's overgrown, or, whatever that may be. So I guess you're the better land nav guy. Do you have any like recommendations or hints or tips or anything I maybe left out of that for people?
I would definitely say to that point, if you're not confident about it, and don't let the land navigation portion of this similar to like run a gun, to where folks may, when they initially start, they might be like, I don't feel like I have the right gear yet, or I'm not ready yet. Kind of approach it the same deal. I feel like don't be dissuaded by, if you're not as most familiar as you are with land nav, to not show up to run a gun until you reach some certain imaginary or arbitrary threshold in your mind that you should be able to go to this. I would absolutely advocate that you do go, provided you have a little bit of background in your end. You may go to one of Ellis's land nav workups before the land nav match to get more intimate with the actual site and with using the tools. But definitely go to it, even if you're not the most confident, because this is how you build confidence. And this is an environment where you're tested. This is an environment where you're going to face at least a crumb of adversity. And it's definitely probably the better places for you to learn and to actually apply a lot of these skills. And honestly, there's not many venues and places around to do the things that we just, we do for land navigation and with run a gun at that. So I definitely advocate that you do it. And, just practice when you can and practice right. And again, like I mentioned, Ellis's events that he does before are wonderful, because you get on site, you figure everything out, and you can fail in a very safe environment, and ultimately learn. So yeah, that's my deal.
Absolutely, and I agree. A lot of times we tell people, just go, just do it. This is a match, I would say, if you have zero land nav, like you've never taken a class, you've never read, like you could do the whole course. They have, like, you could, if you didn't do any of the land nav and you missed every one of them, you couldn't find them, you could continue to shoot the stages. But I think your enjoyment of it would be vastly less, as opposed to, I mean, Ellis does one if you're close, if you're driving further away and you can't do that. I would have to imagine most parts of the country, like within a year's time frame, if you do some Google searching, you can find somebody that's doing a land nav match, or class. Mm-hmm. They have orienteering clubs.
Yep, orienteering.
In most places. It's a little fast paced, but I think for the beginner, I imagine, I've not been able to get out to one, but I'm sure you can find one that's like really inviting and accommodating and kind of learn that skill. What they do is still navigation. It's a little more fast paced, but I think there's probably a lot to be learned.
It's definitely useful. Absolutely useful.
Yeah,
it's definitely worthwhile, especially if there's other options that aren't super local to you or certain feasible for you. Given that option, in the absence of nothing, I would absolutely take up orienteering. That's definitely a good skill to have.
There's a ton of online things. Like I'm sure you could watch enough online videos and then go out and do it yourself.
Yes.
To learn it. That was probably going to be the harder way than having someone show you, or just talk to people. I mean, the land nav class I took, I got to talking to a friend I shot with that was in the Air Force, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I taught land nav in the Air Force for a bunch of years," and I was like, would you be willing to do a class? So he did a free class for us. I got 5, 6, 10 people together, and we used one of my CB Guns. I'll give a shout out. It's a gun store down the road, a buddy of mine. He let us use an empty room he has, went to the class, and then actually right down the road was a metro park. So we did like an hour or two or so in the class, and then we went for an hour out to the metro park and like took the compasses out and like shot azimuths and did some pace count and did some terrain association. And it definitely doesn't make you an expert, but it's a great hands-on like crash course. Like I would guess you could find about everyone. And funny enough, as much as he taught it, he gave us a bunch of stuff beforehand. He said the Boy Scout manual teaches land nav better than the Air Force Army, all these others manuals, like the Boy Scout is. So I'm sure it's somewhere online. Like download the Boy Scout manual and give it a read through and get an idea of like some of the skills and some of the tools and stuff like that. So, anything else you want to add, Nick?
No, I think we covered it. I think really good after action.
All right, cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to add about the match or anything before we sign off here?
I sign up if you're on the fence about it. Absolutely sign up. It's gonna be a good time, and next year is gonna be even better than the last. So it continues to improve, and this specific event becomes, probably I would call among the most compelling events that Ellis puts on, in the entire pedigree of what he's got so far. So I would absolutely recommend that if you're on the fence about it, 100% come on board with the Land Nav Running Gun.
Yeah, I agree. And Ellis, I'm sad that they're as far away from me. I mean, most of them are 7 or 8 hour drive for me, but he always puts on a phenomenal match. The ranges he uses are great. And this is nothing to dig against any other match. I always leave feeling like Ellis's stages have like a challenging but like realistic stage presentations.
Yeah.
Yeah, like your rifle is never super small. It's not massive. It's not super far away. Like I always feel like, well, that's a practical distance to hit thing with a combat rifle. That's a practical distance to hit things with a combat pistol, And there's nothing wrong with matches that put like a piece of pistol steel at 100 yards or, that rifle plate at 600. But it's like, it becomes a little bit of a parlor trick. Like, yeah, I've hit targets with an AR at 600 yards. It's very doable. It's not really what an AR's skill set is. Decent sized targets from 300 in, though, is like, that's right in the meat of like why I would choose an AR. If I had to shoot a bunch of 600-yard targets, I probably wouldn't use a 5.56.
Right.
Probably. So I always appreciate how like practical his stages are without being easy. Some of them are easy, and not easy. The challenge is in like the speed or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they're all very practical is maybe the best way. Yeah. I think that's a really strong.
I think the identity that the stages have is very consistent, is very good. And that's one of the joys of a run-and-gun community is that each venue, each match structure, and each sort of event have their different flavor. And this flavor that Ellis puts on is one that I'm very much a fan of. Not a dig across any other run-and-gun guys running it, but it's what I'm saying is definitely a great spirit to his matches, which I'm a big fan of.
Yep, absolutely. So if you've made it this far, thank you. I know it was a little bit long. Hopefully that helps some people with Land Nav too, because that's not a topic that gets talked about as much on this show, but I think it's a pretty useful skill for life. So thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.